welcome to Talent Hub Talk. I am Ben Duncan, and this is a place where prominent and inspirational figures from both the local ANZ and global Salesforce Ohana share their stories. This episode is sponsored by our friends at Flow Republic. Flow Republic is the elite Salesforce Academy, helping architects all over the world to realize their goal of becoming a Salesforce certified technical architect. The success that architects are having with Flow Republic is incredible. So if you are on your journey to CTA, then I highly recommend checking out flowrepublic.com to understand how they can help you. Welcome back to Talent Hub Talk. Firstly, I would like to thank all of our loyal listeners for regularly tuning in. It really does mean a lot. This is our 200th episode, and it has been an amazing journey having so many awesome guests from the Salesforce ecosystem on the show. I hope you enjoy the conversations as much as I do. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Sandhya Mangrulkar, Senior Manager and Salesforce CTA. Sandhya provides a run-through of her early career, how she came to work with Salesforce, and what she has seen to be the differences between working both onshore and offshore. Sandhya talks through the different Salesforce roles she has had, how she had focused on certain products and industries before finding her way into the pre-sales space. Sandhya explains the benefits and drawbacks about working in a pre-sales role when it comes to attempting the CTA. She explains where her gaps were and describes what it was like to pass the review board. Finally, Sandhya shares what is next for her and how the CTA has affected the role she wants to be in. I hope you enjoy the episode. Sandhya, thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ben. I've been associated with Salesforce ecosystem, so have known you, followed you for long, heard most of your podcasts. So it's completely my privilege to be on this podcast.
No, not at all. It's definitely my pleasure, and I'm really excited to talk about your career and a career that's taken you to a few different countries, and obviously to some major achievements, which includes recently becoming the CTA that you are today. But we will cover that as we go. I like to kind of start at the beginning of your journey there to set the scene for our listeners. So can you remember when in your life and where and how you first became interested in technology and decided that was going to be something you wanted to pursue as a career?
Actually, technology came to my life quite as an accident. I did my engineering in electronics and telecom back in 2004, where the mobile technology was actually rising, and I thought that is where I'm going to be. Unfortunately, there was not a lot of inclusion and diversity at that point of time. And since it was a lot of field work, so Indian IT telecom company at least actually preferred a lot of male candidates. So in fact, I was not even sitting for IT campus at that point of time. Like in engineering, you have IT companies coming in. But at some point of time, I realized, let's be practical, at least give some, have some job in hand. So that's how I landed myself in Mastic. And after some basic IT training, I started as an application development project for UK Council. And that's where my IT journey started and never went back to telecom.
So can you tell me a bit about what that first role was like for you then in the workforce? Because it wasn't a Salesforce role. So was it? Were you a programmer? Were you doing development? Like what did that look like?
Actually, I did all. So the technology that I landed in first it was a bit of old technology. It is Ingress and Open Road. 90% of the world have not even heard of it. So that is what a lot of UK councils were working back in 2005. I don't know whether they have changed. But Ingress is like Oracle database, PLSQL, and Open Road is VB. But since it was so native, the project usually had struggled to get people in. So what they used to ensure is whoever comes in gets an overall development. So, we used to do everything. We used to do code review, start writing functional requirements very early in the career. In the first year of my life, I was a DBA, also configuration in charge, which is modern day DevOps. So, you get a whole SDLC experience. And luckily for me, in my 2.5 years itself, I traveled to UK, was client facing, working with client directly, helping them with user acceptance, regression testing, as well as, reviewing the code that was coming onshore. right, having playbacks with the client, also taking care of any P1 issues that were coming out of UK councils, which had to be just resolved in 1 or 2 hours. When I was back from UK, like I was there for some 6 to 7 months, I actually became the lead of the same team I had left behind. So within my 4 and 5 years in Mastec, I actually had, from developer to lead full experience. So when I left, I kind of had a full-blown IT experience and was ready for whatever, IT would throw at me. So I think my first experience was great. And, first job is always your first love. So I always look back at it with good memories.
So obviously you mentioned that was quite niche. So was there the potential for you to continue working in that space, like the areas that you had initially landed in?
There was and is, like, as I said, it is native. There's not many people on that. So even at UK, I think people with Ingress and Open Road get highly paid because there's not many. But yeah, actually, it quite changed for me. I got married. My husband was in a different city, and I wanted to move from Mumbai to Pune. And he was on Salesforce. And that's how I actually landed into Salesforce. Funnily, like after marriage, he had gone to US for a very small stint. I traveled with him, and it was recession. So it wasn't a great decision. People weren't happy that I left job and I was just traveling with my husband, but it all turned up good. There were H1Bs available. His manager decided to do H1B for both of us. And I landed in the Salesforce. I was a SaaS project manager, business application analyst. Took care of a lot of application, including Salesforce, Jira, a Marketo, which is now bought by Oracle. So that was my entry to SaaS world, from native to directly, SaaS, which was just picking up back in 2009. So this was when I remember in Dreamforce, Chatter was announced as a very big thing. They actually called it Facebook of corporate world, and everyone was very excited. So that's where I started Salesforce. And yeah, it's been a nice and long journey.
So at that point, obviously you mentioned your partner is or was working in Salesforce. Were you actively like trying to move into the Salesforce space at that time based on what you knew, or was it just so happens that the role you landed was also looking after Salesforce?
So somewhere I knew at that point I didn't want to be in Ingress Open Road what I started. So as I said, I just had accompanied him. So because he was working on Salesforce and it was niche, I started reading about it. And it was, Open Road Ingress, as I said, everything had to be done. The screens had to be done. Even if you had to create like LWC, you have to create everything that you want to see on the screen. And it wasn't even very code friendly. You had to do a lot of manual coding. So at some point when I saw Salesforce, I was like, wow, everything comes. You just have to configure. And that time it was more of configure. And yes, obviously customization was always there. So I liked it. I started reading it. So I was like, okay, I'm just sitting. Let me get my Salesforce admin done. And that's how I fell in love and started, and thankfully landed a job in US where I was working with end user and understood the problems and could resolve it very quickly with Salesforce, which would have taken long time with the software I was working with.
Mm-hmm. And you had been a developer, or like you said, you kind of did everything in the first role. You did a bit of everything. Had you ever done any coding, any development work in the Salesforce space?
Yes, not in Salesforce. I did in my previous job. That was a 15-year-old system. So, I mean, apart from the application development, when the AMS used to come, we had to read the 15-year-old code. So it was scary sometimes because, it has so much code to go through and things like that. So at that point, yes, I did. But very early in the career, as I said, I moved to the project management kind of role. So I left coding, and as I said, I never thought I would be a coder. I always wanted to be in telecom. So coding wasn't my first love, but I loved Salesforce as a product. I loved how you could, marry the domain and get what the client, solve the client issues very easily in using Salesforce. I like the designing part more than the coding part, and somehow I never went back to coding, which was detrimental at some stages of my life. But some friends of mine always said, why are you so against coding? But I was like, I don't know, I love designing, architecting, but coding is not my cup of tea. And thankfully for me, I think ChatGPT has come, and so I'm not afraid that I think the world is going to be more easier for coders.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the reason I asked that question is because I think there's this perception with some people that to be a CTA, you have to come from a development background or have, a good level of technical depth in terms of development and coding. But I just wanted to draw that out because I think people listening to this who don't come from that background or haven't necessarily been a coder in the Salesforce world can take inspiration and guidance from that as well. So that's good to know. And then obviously you did when you returned to India, you went into consulting, right? And you were working for Arxis, who is a company that over the years has been well known here in Australia. Obviously not yes. So much now, but a lot of listeners will know of Arxis in the earlier days. At that point, it looked, having reviewed your profile, it looked like you had some specialisms, and one of them was Pardot, which to me isn't an area that has a huge amount of, I guess, specialists in. There are some, but it's not as popular as Marketing Cloud, as an example, from a career perspective. And then also you were specializing in some industry verticals. So have you found that having that specialization has been beneficial for your career?
Yes. So as I earlier said, I am a very true believer that, you need to understand the domain first, actual client problems before, using technology to solve it. So from my previous experience, as I said, very closely worked with the end user. I understood their problem, and somehow I got that understanding and empathy, and that actually helped with me in non-for-profit. So what was happening at that point of time, even now, but Salesforce were giving 10 free licenses for non-for-profit. So the leadership wanted to automate things, and the end user actually, the employees actually already struggled with time, because they have to do donation, they have to do their day-to-day activities and things like that. And then that IT project actually came to them as an overhead. So, actually talking to them, understanding the problem with empathy, and delivering something which worked for them, they could easily adopt. That was actually a journey, and not everyone is very comfortable doing with non-for-profit, because you have to be very patient with them. So and that time non-for-profit was just a package, so you had to do a lot of customization as well. So it was a great learning. Along with domain, learned a lot of things on technology as well. Same thing for manufacturing. We were actually building a bid management solution on opportunity. So opportunity was just a basic object. And then if you have to manage multiple bids on it, decide who wins, and then, that is the final opportunity amount per se. That was a lot of customization. And we did it for a lot of famous manufacturing like James Hardie, Hunter Douglas, Schindler's List. So again, great experience. With Pardot, it was a different story. So actually, Salesforce Australia were looking for partners to do onboarding. As you said, it's niche, not many people out there. I had some experience with Pardot, and that's how I landed. I traveled to Sydney, took the onboarding training. Now, when I say onboarding, what they needed was help them set up Pardot. So then they can start sending emails, journeys, and do everything first. Like help them with their first email templates, sending emails, create journeys. So for journeys, you had to actually work, understand the use case, help them, whiteboard their idea, and then create it. So I did a lot of them for their Australian clients as well as Indian clients here. And I think marketing was learning on the job for me. Like I knew the app, because I used to help my end users back in US, but I was not very functional about it. But as I worked with them, I think I understood marketing, what all can be done. And end of it came out of with marketing, a part out as well as marketing cloud certification. So that's always been my journey. I have gone and understood the domain technology and then ensure that I got certified. So it's a full circle with, whatever I was doing.
Has Pardot been a consistent in your career? Like, has that been something you've kind of continued to work with over the years?
Actually, it's turned from Pardot to Marketing Cloud now. So when I was with Axis, I worked a lot in Pardot. But now Pardot is not used, like it's used for account manage. In fact, they've also named it as account management. I think I'm not very sure. Salesforce keep changing the name. But more of Pardot has started reducing over the years, and Marketing Cloud has picked up. Also because now marketing also has become such complex, solutions that is being built, and Marketing Cloud has that ability to do everything. Using customization and code and things like that. And also the experience that Marketing Cloud gives with all the integrations now is better than Pardot. So yeah, I mean, now it's Marketing Cloud and not Pardot.
Mm-hmm. So you've mentioned, obviously, you were in the UK, you were in the US, and you've spent a number of months as well in Australia. And then obviously you've returned to India each time. And how do you describe the differences between being like an onshore, like the experience of being an onshore consultant compared to working as an offshore consultant? Like, what are the major differences for both you as the person, but also how you're engaged by the customer?
I think anytime if you are onshore, being onshore client facing is a better experience because you're talking directly with them and engaging with them, and as I said, can also lead to better solution, right? Many times what happens at offshore is you get a filtered version of what an onshore consultant or architect thinks, and then you solution based on that. In Axis, I was lucky enough to be able to even do workshops and conversations with client directly. So it was, even when I was at offshore, I was always client facing. But many of the offshore roles is mainly on, onshore facing would put a functional requirement and then you start working on them. So you actually do not understand. I mean, it's not common, but sometimes you do not understand the actual problem. You are solving what the onshore person has perceived. Not that they're wrong, but it's, if you are there, I think you understand more.
Yeah.
To be very frank, I love the onshore or the client facing part of it. Initial years, India, there was limited opportunities. Now, India also has started accepting Salesforce as a CRM. Arundhati Bhattacharya is the current CEO of Salesforce. Made it big in the finance industry, as well as Hyperforce helped because India was also very reluctant about data being shared. So now there's a lot of client-facing opportunities in India for India business. And that's why you can see the CTAs are also coming back, in India because, we are also ready to lead from front. But apart from that, I think what I always find is the work-life balance. So when you are in, say, UK or US, sorry, UK and Australia, US not that much, but at least UK and Australia, you have very nice work-life balance. Like you will shut down after 5 p.m. And even the people are very considerate. Like whenever I work, my clients, my co-workers were very considerate that, okay, this is your personal time. We should not disturb you. But India, it's, you end up having long working hours. If you're working with a client, they expect you to be available whenever they want you to be. So then it's very difficult to draw the line. You have to have that hard conversations to draw the line. So yeah, that's a major difference. US, sometimes I feel they also work very hard per se, beyond work hours and things like that. But I love UK and Australia in terms of work culture, weather, everything.
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, I can speak for both as well. I'm from the UK originally. I've been living in Australia for 13 years, but I think Australia has it perfect in terms of the I mean, there are obviously certain situations where people will work longer hours, but generally the work-life balance here is great. And on your point
In fact, if you
around
work long hours, they would be like apologetic about it. I'm sorry you had to take the time out of family. And then you feel okay, rather than you have to kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, it's not the expectation. It's like the
Exactly.
kind of
It's not a norm.
So you mentioned as well around CTAs now in India, and that's definitely been interesting to see, and it's interesting to see how you explain that, because like we had Poonam on the show as well in the past, and what we historically saw as offshore roles were developer, consultants. The requirements would be gathered onshore, the design would be done onshore. And then the brief would be sent offshore for build, come back, the demos would be done onshore, and that's definitely changing now, right? And yourself and Poonam are examples of some of the more senior, some of the more client engagement, client facing work can be done anywhere in the world now. And do you think that's been driven by things like COVID as well, where people couldn't travel, or do you think, as you mentioned, is it more the work that's happening in India on Salesforce, rather than it being, the customer facing roles are also being done from India, but to Australian clients?
I think it's mixed. India always have a great mind. So over a period of time, we have been able to pick up those roles. But COVID definitely helped a lot, because work anywhere culture basically told leadership, or many times because it was so competitive, like in pre-sales, I know how how the whole thing changed from onshore offshore. We had to be more offshore to make it more competitive. Now when that happened, few roles that could have easily come offshore was tech arc, right? Business analyst, and had to still be onshore. Functional people still had to be onshore, because they had to be talking with the client, getting the requirements. Or what we used to do was have one tech arc offshore, onshore, and one tech arc offshore. So for client engagements, road mapping and things like that, you had a senior tech arc, but actual designing of the solution is started being done offshore. And in fact, there are so much deliveries right now, we are doing 100% offshore. So because even clients across the world are understanding that we are paying more just for having one individual onshore. In fact, I was in a client meeting and we were discussing price, and he looked at one line and he said, "Oh, there's no one worth 1 million." Right? Because that architect over the whole financial year was 1 year on his bill. So I think that is also a realization which is happening. So whatever roles that can be moved, and with, I think, the designer certification and everything helped, because everyone got certified, everyone was ready to pick up the roles. So the roles were coming, and there was a whole group of people who were ready to pick up the roles and deliver high quality. Because if it would have come and the quality wasn't delivered, it wouldn't have stayed.
Of course.
So and that kind of, I think even the CTA thing, it was never a thought, that we will create CTAs at offshore. But now the actually Accenture invested. They invested on 4 CTA, 4 people, send them to Flow Republic for coaching, and the exam, as you know, CTA is not cheap. And thankfully, we had 100% results. All of us have crossed the line. But yeah, I think both helped.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned pre-sales there. So now we'll talk about pre-sales and your experience, what that means for you, and the journey you've been on to CTA and coming from the pre-sales background. But when did you first get exposed to pre-sales?
It was Axis. So as I was aligned to non-for-profit, part out, and manufacturing domain, so I did the RFPs for it, go-to-market strategy, everything. I worked very closely with my manager on that. And somewhere that was the switch. I loved how fast-paced learning it happens in pre-sales. I'm generally a knowledge junkie. So I think it was the best place to learn. Like what I found was, if you're on a project, you're there for 6 months plus 1 year, and you learn only the things that are in the project. But pre-sale, you're doing, RFP every like here it's more fast paced, but you're at least doing every 2 to 3 weeks, and every RFP is a different. At Accenture, it is a different domain technology, so I have to be on it. So when I joined Accenture, actually my aim was to learn enterprise architecture, because Axis, being a small boutique firm, didn't have huge projects, right? So and with that aim, I actually took sales solution architecture over technical architecture when I joined, and it helped because in my first 6 months, I was I solutioned a first education cloud, first health cloud, and I won those deals. And pre-sales generally are always ahead of the curve, so they are the first to, before it actually goes into delivery, you have to always understand, right? So learned velocity, which is called industry cloud now. I think I've delivered health, media cloud, utilities, public sector, education, non-for-profit, everything on industry cloud now. So as well as being enterprise architect, and for multi-clouds, Salesforce integrations with Workday, Oracle, SAP. So within 2-3 years, to be able to do everything, that will not happen in delivery. So it is difficult because you have to be fast paced, but that I love it.
So for anyone listening that doesn't really understand that pre-sales role, obviously you've kind of given some insight into like every 2 to 3 weeks you're working on a different RFP. But what goes into that RFP? So obviously you're needing to understand the use case, the requirements, but then what do you do differently to what a delivery architect would do once the project is won, I guess?
So generally, there are two kinds of RFPs. There's one RFP which has detailed requirement. So you can go through it, solution it. A solution in sense, you would decide which all clouds would be needed. You would put a whole together solution blueprint saying, okay, to solve this issue, I would need a sales cloud, service cloud. I will go with XYZ app exchange. This would be the integrations needed, this much data migration, and then you would have to estimate for it. And staff it. I mean, half of the pre-sales role is technology associated, and half is, Excel sheets where you're staffing it, pricing it. Stakeholder management also becomes a main part of it. At least in Accenture, we have a very stringent review process. We're actually working with managing director, telling them why they should do this, right? And those you're actually having that viewpoint, what they have, and it's also a very fast learning experience to grow as a leader, right? And then the second part of the some type of proposals are where they say, you are already a big SI partner. Tell us how we solve our issue. So they wouldn't even give a business requirement or high level requirements. So in those, we have to actually research the industry, understand what the common use cases are, define a MVP for them, like, okay, let's get started with this, and define an overall roadmap for 2-3 years. Many times you do get SMEs, at least functional SMEs, who will help you, document those use cases. But you would have to anyways design it with Salesforce, right? Like, what can you use, which clouds can you use, which features you can use, and then estimate it, staff it, price it. With proposal, some organization, you would also be creating the proposal. In Accenture, we have a separate team. So our role is very much detailed as a pre-sales architect. But that's your day-to-day. As I said, it's 2 to 3 days, weeks you get. And in that, sometimes you have to understand the domain, understand a new cloud. Like, for example, when media cloud came in, when utilities cloud came in, no one knew it. So you're the first person who had to research. There's no even training. You would go to the Salesforce content and see how the fit gap analysis actually happen. And then you include customization of whatever doesn't fit out of the box. While doing that, you have to ensure it is a deliverable solution as well as a winnable solution, right? So you have to put a delivery hat as well as a sales hat.
So would you build like proof of concepts as well as part of your role?
Yes, for some customers, we create proof of concept. We have a different team within Accenture. We call it innovation team, which helps us with the POC creation. And as a part of orals, we would demo as well. There are many times while an RFP comes and you see that is something that is going to come more. Like in US child welfare, like the policy changed, and I think that happened once in Australia also when I was working there. The policy changes, and that each state is going to now create an RFP. So it's a good time to also go back to leadership and say, it's the time to create an asset, which will help you, pace up the development, as well as by showing the asset, it's easier to win the deals as well. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's a mix of POC, asset creation, but as a pre-sale architect, you would give an input. At Accenture, I was not involved in creating POC, but Axis, being a boutique firm, you have your hands everywhere, so you would also create a POC.
Yeah, makes sense. So to me, that sounds like the kind of perfect role for going for the CTA, right? Because you're seeing lots of different requirements regularly. You're having to solution quickly. You're having to get across all of the new, the new and old technology within the Salesforce world. So when you decided to go for the CTA, and being from that pre-sales background, what were the benefits and what were the negatives, I guess, for you going for the CTA with the knowledge you had as a pre-sales architect?
I think very rightly said. You won't, the common conversation around the CTA community is the name is Certified Technical Architect, but it has a lot of things which is solution associated, right? So being a solution architect or anyone coming from pre-sales, it's definitely helps. Positive terms, I had 70% of domain knowledge. I actually had one of the CTA candidate who failed the review board, and I asked him, what went wrong according to you? And he said, I went in the domain that came through, I didn't even know. Because you have 3 hours to solve, and if you don't know the domain, understanding the ask and designing itself becomes a challenge. So positive, obviously, I had the breadth. I knew domains. I knew a lot of clouds. So what could be done in Salesforce? In CTA, you usually use sales, service, experience. You do not use industry clouds, but at least you know how the problem was solved. So that helps. As the fast-paced solution, like in 3 hours, putting a solution out there, that didn't scare me. So that was a benefit. Negative was a depth. In Axis, yes, I had the depth, but in Accenture, since I was only doing pre-sales and Salesforce grows so fast, there were so many things that I didn't know. Right. So the depth I lacked, which I had to pick up in the journey.
And how did you go about that? I guess how do you go deeper into certain areas? How do you identify the areas that you need to go deeper into?
So I think Flow Republic actually helped there. So Seb has put a big Excel, a scary mind map, which is for the fit gap analysis. And on the day one, you hit the ground reality in sense of what all you need to be expert on to sit the review board. Then we had a group of 6 and let me just put it out there, to become a CTA, you need to have a good study buddy because it's a long journey and you just cannot walk alone. So thankfully, I had a nice cohort, but all of them were technical architects. So when they were talking, most of the times I used to get lost because I had not even heard few words. I used to just quickly take the note, go back to help.salesforce trailhead and, at least understand what they were saying. So that was my initial days. Eventually, what we did was we, distributed the topics. So I took all the clouds. I'm also a PM, so project governance, everything I'm comfortable with. So I took all those and they taught me OAuths, integration patterns, Copado and everything. So we taught each other. And so end of the CTA journey, like at least I say that It's not just knowledge that you gain great relationships, friends, mentors, some a group of people who would, you can work with in future as you grow as a CTA. So I think I made long lasting friends as a part of this journey, because you were like learning together, struggling together. So yeah, that kind of helped filling all those gaps that I had.
What about the? I mean, that's amazing. That's a recurring theme. I think, like so many people talk about their study groups, whether they're from Flow Republic or ones that are out in the, they find people themselves. It seems that definitely is the way to go. Now, you mentioned earlier your partner was in Salesforce before you. So obviously, I guess they understand the CTA as well, and not everyone has that, I guess, in terms of having an understanding partner that would understand why it's important, also the level of commitment required. But how did that journey work for you in terms of the level of input that it was going to take? Did you know that from the outset? Like, was there more than you were expecting, and how was that for the family as well, I guess?
Yeah. I think I have been hearing a lot of interviews and all the success LinkedIn updates, right? And the common theme was you need to take a lot of times out of your family, friends. Um, and somehow, personally, that is something I didn't want to do. Like, as a mom, I didn't want to take time off my kid. Um, what I did, obviously, was outsource what I could, cooking, cleaning, laundry. So in India, that helps. We have a village to take care of uh, house as well as kids. So that is something I started. But what I did in turn to my health is I used to get up early morning, do my scenario, then work. So eventually it started impacting my health. And I also try to change my sleep pattern, because review board is usually end of the, like, it starts at 4:30, 5:30 our time and goes till 11:30, 12. So it actually completely spoiled my sleep, and I was sleeping very late hours. And I think that's the time my husband and my kid, actually, they used to not wake me up in the morning sometimes. Like, my kid used to go to school and I used to not know. So that's the kind of commitment I think my husband and I was like shocked my kid wasn't waking me up, because he needed his mama. But he understood that mama was sleeping late and it's okay, she'll be there when I'm back. And I used to be like amazed. I used to get up and like the house is empty, and they were like, no, you slept late. So yes, that helped, because he understood what it takes to be a CTA. What I feel is I scared him because he could be in the CTA journey as well. But I am the nerd of the family, and seeing me struggle so much with hours and my health as well, I think he is now not sure whether he wants to be in that journey, kind of thing. So I'm just telling, now I know I can actually direct you, but let's see.
And when you mention your health, obviously that's, nothing's more important than your health. So was there any time through the journey when you questioned whether or not it was worth continuing?
So just to give you idea why I said health. So throughout my journey, actually I started with a third degree ligament tear, so which kind of kept me immovable for 6 months. So that had impacted my immunity. Over that, I had chikungunya, which is again leads to bones and limbs pain. And then the COVID somehow was the last straw, because I was already um, having so much health issues. So when COVID hit me, I took it bit badly. And then I had other issues related to chest, like bronchitis, sinus. So overall, because of the work hours, I mean, my work as well as CTA, and generally the stress that you add on was affecting my immunity. So it was, I also actually took a time off in terms of, at least for a few months, I was part-time, so that I could actually get back some health, have work-life balance. I wanted to just concentrate on life more rather than just running around. um but yeah, it's pretty hard. And to be very frank, everyone I know who was on the journey had something going on. For me, it was my health. Someone had ailing parents, someone had kids and things like that. So it is your persistence and resilience that takes you through the journey. Um, no wonder there's just less than 400 CTAs in the world. It's not that there are not many technical architects. It's just that the journey itself is, it's not a 2 or 3 month journey. People sometimes fail and have to just keep going. So you have to concentrate on the journey rather than the result, or it just gets very, very tiring.
Yeah. And how important was it for you for your family to be on that journey, like to understand, like for your child, was it like, because did you differentiate between work and CTA? Like, did they know, right, I can't go in that room because mum's on a video call with work, or I can't go in that room because mum's studying? Like, did there need to be a differentiation, or was it just all blurred into one, and you came across as a workaholic?
For sure, I came out as a workaholic. My kid, when I started, was 4.5, 5, so it was very difficult to explain him. But somehow he understood. I think the way I was, mocks are very typical generally, or the conversations you have at work. He was just 5 one day, and I do not have a closed room policy for my kid. So he just came in and he asked me, Mama, is it work or Salesforce? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, Salesforce, what you're doing, your exam, or is it, say a work? So without telling itself, he understood his mama was working on 2 different projects. And over the period of time, I think he was praying the most that I pass and he gets his mama back. So though I tried my best not to cut his hours, but it's difficult, right? You have somewhere those hours are taken back. Many times you have your mock so late. So there are times when I couldn't take him to bed. And again, he would walk into me, and I have done mocks where like I'm sleeping, he's there on me and I'm still talking and I'm making him sleep. So that wasn't something which he wanted, obviously. So when I got my result, he was the person who was dancing the most.
Yeah, I was going to say, next question was, how did it feel to pass and to share that with your loved ones, and for people that had seen the toll it had taken on your health and things like that, to actually get that outcome at the end? What was that feeling like?
So my first reaction was a relief, done and dusted. The sense of achievement actually started coming when the wishes started pouring in. Then it was I knew it was a big deal, but when, you actually start hearing from people, you start realizing it is over, and it gets overwhelming. Like, I had a lot of ladies write to me that it is inspirational, right? To see you do all, like work, CTA, and I am also like, I'm big on Instagram and Reels actually. So whatever I do, I actually put it out there like a cute reel. So they know I also enjoy life. So they were like, how do you do this? And even in my work, I was not very loud about that I'm in a CTA journey. So when I became CTA, I went into meetings and people like, how did you do between so many deals, right? So yeah, at that point, it was like, oh yes, I did something big, and it was humbling, overwhelming, but ultimately I'm actually glad I didn't fail. Because somewhere I used to always feel, how would I motivate my kid in the future, right? To not give up and things like that. And not many people say this, but CTA, however much of a technical you are, it actually boils down to that day. You know, uh, what scenario you get. Many times, even the judge. It so much depends on your mental and physical health. And people are capable. It's just that they are not able to convert it. Your luck plays a very good role. So I was just relieved that I just crossed the line.
So if you look at start to finish, how different are you now after the journey? And obviously the result is great, but I know the journey means so much to people, and they, obviously you've made friends and things like that, which is also awesome. But as an architect, how much more well-rounded are you now, having gone through that journey?
A lot. I was a non-for-profit consultant or part-out consultant from there to being a CTA, I have learned a lot. I think I can go into any meeting not worried about what would be thrown at me. So as an individual, as a architect, as a professional, I think it is great. I always tell people it's okay even if you don't want to become a CTA, plus do take the journey, because you learn so much in the journey, just those initial prerequisite architect. And CTA, obviously, it's an all-round development. It's not just technical, it's also communication, it's also storytelling. It's also how you manage the stress, because you have 45 minutes of presentation and 45 minutes of Q&A, right? So in that, they try to change the scenario, and you have to be giving a solution on the top. So it actually grooms you overall. Having said that, I feel CTA is a superpower, right? And with great power comes great responsibility, because now people take you for the word of it.
Mhm.
And if you say wrong, it is out there. It's like, oh, that CTA said, it must be right. So that is the responsibility you carry, and you have to be always on the top of the game in terms of knowledge. You should know what you're saying, you're advising is right. So yes, grown, but also very scary in terms of now I know I need to be always right.
Yeah. And having now gone deeper, obviously that was the area that you needed to go deeper to pass, because you were quite broad in what you were doing. Has that enticed you to want to go into delivery more, or do you still getting everything you need from the world of pre-sales?
No. For sure, I think I just had a conversation with my lead where I was like, I'll have like to mix it now with pre-sales. Is I enjoy, so I would not leave it, but I would like to mix it with technology consulting, delivery in sense on a high level discovery, designing the solution, reviewing the solution. So yes, I think the next steps would be to mix, have a all-round role with pre-sale consulting and delivery. So I'm just digesting, but yeah, I think that would where the next steps lie.
Yeah, nice. Well, I'm excited to see what does come next, and really, really great to hear about your journey, and hopefully our listeners are inspired, and take on board some of your excellent advice and guidance through what you learned through the journey to CTA and your early career. So, if anyone is listening and wants to reach out and ask any questions, where's the best place to find you?
LinkedIn. I'm very much active on LinkedIn, so anyone can drop a message for sure.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. Absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you. It was a great experience talking to you.
Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the chat, and if you did, please make sure you have subscribed for future episodes that are coming through. I would also be very grateful if you would consider leaving a review on your chosen podcast platform, as 5-star reviews will help us to reach more trailblazers from across the world. I look forward to sharing another episode with you soon, and thanks again.